created. I mean, you think of like a reactor, for example, might have 100 tons of fuel assembly. The fuel assemblies inside it may weigh 100 tons, and they get rotated on a third base every 2 years, whereas a third comes out between 1 and 2 years, and then another third of that, 30 tons goes in. So basically, each third section or 30 tons group of fuel assemblies will be in a reactor for between 4.5 and between 3 and 6 years, depending on how long you wait. And we only skim the very top off that, and so it's so small that even when we're skimming the top off, you still get that's a 1 gigawatt reactor, which is 1,000 megawatts. So its fuel assemblies weigh roughly about 100 tons. And to compare that, a coal-fired power station goes through like about 12,000 tons. Equivalent size coal-fired power station goes through about 12,000 tons a day. So the difference is huge. And I can't think of any material we can recycle where you get more than what you got out originally. If you can, just if you can think of anything. So basically, most things that are recycled, you end up with less than what you got in the first time round. But the beauty about nuclear is you can recycle something and you can get more. And there are a multitude of different recycling plans or possibilities, and you can just keep recycling until you run as long as there's still uranium-238. Now, let's talk about breeder reactors. I've forgotten to mention this about breeder reactors. As the thing about breeder reactors is that because the breeder reactors are essentially the log burners, they need a large amount of kindling, or this was another image in my head of burning a log, is you need a large amount of branches underneath your log to burn it. So for example, a CANDU reactor can start igniting the uranium-235 of 0.7% with natural uranium. The 0.7% of branch to log ratio, branch to compared to the 99.3% log. Other reactors have maybe 3 or 4% branch, but a breeder reactor you need about 10 to 20, maybe even 20% of uranium-235. So it's like a breeder reactor is like imagine a log where you've got a big pile of branches underneath, and you have to ignite those branches for a considerable period of time. But once you load it, then the log burning becomes a self-perpetuating process, and that self-perpetuating process is converting the log into charcoal, or converting uranium-238 into plutonium-239. And if the rate at which that you can configure it between it being what's called a burner or a breeder. If the rate at which the charcoal is burning, or the rate at which the plutonium-239 is getting smashed in half and becoming fission products, is happening faster than the rate at which it's being created by uranium-238 absorbing a neutron and then undergoing 2 steps of beta decay, then what will happen is you end up with basically no plutonium left. So it'll be like there'll be no. You'll burn all the charcoal. Alternatively, you can configure it so that the rate at which the charcoal burns happens slower than the rate it's been created. So what happens is that you end up with, at the end of the cycle, which is much longer, obviously it's much longer, but for the same reason, you burn a log and it just burns for way longer than if you just burn, like kindling. So you end up with charcoal left over. Now you can use this later on. Now, alternatively, and this is the kicker, is that to start a breeder reactor, you need 20% uranium-235 or 20% kindling or branch to log ratio, which is much higher for the first cycle. But for subsequent cycles, you can extract the charcoal from a previous cycle and use the charcoal. It's like how you go to the shops and you buy like the fire starters, like the charcoal fire starters, which are already pre-made. So essentially you can put the charcoal, and this, and incidentally, this is, remember how at the beginning of my, when I talked about the metaphor in my last video, I talked about the original forest, the forest from which we chop down these trees as a metaphor for natural uranium in the wild, for want of a better word. Well, there's this other material, thorium. Now, thorium is like uranium-238. Imagine the original thorium as being like a tree with no branches. Thorium cannot burn immediately, but thorium can be converted its own equivalent to charcoal. But thorium don't necessarily need this in a breeder reactor, because thorium becomes it transitions in the same way through the two steps, absorbs the neutron, then undergoes 2 steps of beta decay to become thorium-232 becomes uranium-233, and uranium-233 is like uranium-235. It's fissile. So things which are, this is a good point. Things which are burn immediately are called fissile. Things that can transition to become fissile products are called fertile. So uranium-238 is fertile. So thorium would be burnt in the thermal spectrum reactors, because thorium changes into uranium, and thermal spectrum reactors are optimized to consume uranium-235 or uranium-233, which is basically similar. So the upshot is, in the breeder reactors, which are either the log burners or the diesel motors equivalent, depending on which metaphor. I'm jumping around metaphors, but so the breeder reactor you can burn it all the way down, or you can burn it so that you still end up with charcoal left over. Now, there's a word in nuclear technology called reprocessing, and in this metaphor, reprocessing, imagine you put a log on the fire and you go to bed at night and you come back in the morning, and often it won't burn all the way through. The fire will go out, and the fire will often go out because of the ash. This is important, because the fission products have various things which slow things down, like xenon, and the ash, and so at the end of that, in the morning, the fire's gone out. There's still usable logs there, and there's still charcoal there, and there's ash and there's soot. So you take it outside, and you take the tray outside, and you shake it out, and the ash goes away. You get rid of the ash, and you reuse. You now have charcoal and log which you can reuse, and the process of separating this charcoal and log and getting rid of the soot and the ash is called reprocessing. Reprocessing is just like a generic term for any sort of recycling of used material, So, but that's the potential for. So the idea is you take the charcoal and you can mix it with log or any branches, and it becomes what's called MOX. MOX stands for mixed oxide fuel. So that's another recycling potential that you have with nuclear materials. And the thing is all the you can mix it with here's the kicker. You can mix it with the tailings from the enrichment. So remember, in the metaphor, in the enrichment is the sawmill where you chuck you chuck the tailings from the sawmill out the back. And in real life, the depleted uranium in America, there's about 750,000 tons of this, which isn't that much in Kentucky. So you can mix this with the charcoal, and you can blend it with the charcoal, and the charcoal will like the kindling will ignite straight away, and the charcoal will allow the log to convert to charcoal and then ignite. So that's my metaphor. Is you have a forest, and I'll sum it up. You have natural materials, which is like the forest, and the forest has uranium tree, which is 99% log, 0.7% branch. Then you have the thorium tree, and the thorium tree is 4 times more abundant than the uranium tree, but it's all it's all log. There's no equivalent. There's no thorium equivalent. So we essentially use the branches. The vast majority of reactors are furnaces optimized to burn branches. But we built and developed way back in the 40s and 50s the technology, and Russia, for example, has come a long way with this to burn log. But for various reasons, we haven't bothered. But we know that if we ever ran out of, we can go back to all the waste streams which contain either log or branch or both, or charcoal, because some of these breeder reactors, we built these breeder reactors which are like log burning furnaces back in the 50s, like EBR, or 60s EBR2, or the British built one called Dunmere breeder reactor up in Scotland, and they produce all this charcoal, for want of a better word, because they produce this charcoal on the presumption that they would build breeder reactors in the future. And so Britain, for example, has something like 120 tons of plutonium, which is charcoal just sitting around, which this has to be heavily guarded. Well, one of the things that happens with plutonium-239 is that every now and again it absorbs a neutron and becomes plutonium-240, and this makes it, the mixture of that, plutonium-239 and 240, makes it difficult to make a bomb out of. So in this metaphor, we could, for example, get charcoal or kindling or branches and go and use it to become an arsonist. So no, we could use it for a weapon, yeah. But that's the... So anyhow, it goes through the fuel enrichment. You end up with the tailings, which is the leftover logs. You then put it through furnaces, and the furnaces don't perfectly burn it. You know, some of them optimized to burn the branch, in which almost none of it gets, the vast majority of it is unconsumed. Breeder reactors can go through a lot more, although some breeder reactors are better than others. In the 40s and 50s, they developed liquid where it's dissolved in molten salts. So liquid, Eugene Wigner, who was a chemical engineer, he obviously thought that, you know, every machine we use, we tend to burn things better if we burn it as a liquid or a gas than if we burn it as a solid. And some of the reasons why it won't burn perfectly is for the exact same reason. The fire goes out, you know, and it's just... So that's my part 2 for a nuclear fuel cycle. If I think of anything more I want to say, I'll be back. But have a good day. It sounds like I hope that